Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 482 to 484 for the 20th to the 22nd of June. For mapping today, there will be two different mappings. You can see that actually two different layers. The reason is because whatever happened on the 20th to 21st is a bit heavy, and I separated the mapping, so it's gonna be a little bit hard to read, but only the bravest and most intelligent people can continue to watch, and the smartest one will press the like button, and the wise one will be subscribed to this channel. So let's start off with the Southern Front. At the Southern Front, we have a missile strike reported at the Chongar Bridge. I don't know why is it Chonghor, yeah. So that means I spell wrongly. Yeah, Chonghar. It sounds like it sounds like Korea now. Okay, so this bridge, apparently both bridges has been hit. It's not entirely disabled in the sense that the bridge did not totally collapse. There's a big hole in one of them, at least in the photos. So it's actually, this bridge is pretty vital in the sense that this is actually one of the major, this is actually where the highway actually goes through. If you look at the highway, it goes all the way from Xiangkhoi all the way up to the Zaporizhzhia Front. And there is alternative routes the Russians can use, which is along this this long coastal road, which is not exactly a highway, so it's going to be a much slower drive. Whatever it is, the Ukrainians seems to be pretty determined to take out resupply routes from Crimea, and previously we do have drone strike reported at Xiangkhoi as well. So this is not this is a continuation of what the Ukrainians trying to do to cut off the connection between Crimea to the rest of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. And that's all from the Southern Front in terms of the situation over at the southern side. This is 20th to 22nd. Okay, so moving into the Zaporizhzhia Front, we go through the 20th to 21st first. So what happens is that the Russian forces, so there is fighting reported near Kamyanske as well as near Lobkove. This is happening because the Ukrainians were trying to send reinforcement to Lobkove, and they got struck by Russian forces. And within Pyatikaki itself, the Ukrainian forces on the 20th of June actually launched an attack. Because in the previous report, the Russian forces actually recaptured Pyatikaki, and on the 20th in the morning, the Ukrainian forces attacked Pyatikaki again, and there is no one defending Pyatikaki, and it went straight for Zerebianki. So and then thus there is fighting reported at Zerebianki. Then after that did not work out. The Russians counterattacked against the Ukrainian forces, and the Ukrainian forces withdrew. So fighting was reported at Pyatikaki on the 21st, with the Russian forces counterattacking from Zerebianka or Zerebianki, and they knocked out the Ukrainian forces again and recaptured Pyatikaki again. And on the 21st, by the afternoon, the Ukrainian forces counterattack again, and based on the latest information, on the 22nd, it is recaptured again by the Ukrainian forces. So yeah, it's extremely funny how this turned out. And there is fighting reported on at Pyatikaki again. Now that the Russian forces is now conducting some kind of attack against Pyatikaki. Tentatively, is still more of a positional kind of thing. And there is geolocations by Deep State UA at this position. They try to justify that Pyatikaki has always been under Ukrainian control after they captured it, and there's no such thing as the Russians are retaking over Pyatikaki. So that's the situation over at Pyatikaki. So if you are pro-Ukrainian, I would say that Pyatikaki had always been Ukrainian. But if you do trust the Russian sources in any way, or form, then basically this is pretty much a gray zone of a village where the town just keep changing hands between the two. And I heard that Petikaki means 5 houses. Definitely there's more than 5 houses here. So anyway, just kind of interesting tidbits. And moving on, let's double. Okay, so we move into the Orikhiv sector. At the Orikhiv sector, we have a reinforcement reported at Avdiivka. Reportedly, this is some 71st Jaeger Brigade being deployed over this place over here. And over at the front lines, the Ukrainian forces were launching attacks against Robotine from Novodanilivka. So this Novodanilivka and Robotine, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack towards Robotine. There is geolocations of Ukrainian forces over at this location by Chris 759, as well as this location. So one is just south of Orikhiv, the other one is just south of Novodanilivka. And with this geolocation, we can confirm that the Ukrainian forces actually did make some progress to allow them to to build some base forward positions that allows them to continue their attack against the Russian positions. So this allows us to update the front line a little bit. And there is fighting reported on the 20th near Novodanilivka. This is part of the attack, so by the 65th Mechanized Brigade. And then on the 20th, they also attacked north of Robotine. This is reported by Deep State UA and Raiba. And by the 22nd, 21st, there was no fighting being reported at this sector here. On the 22nd, which is past 24 hours, we have the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Ukrainian forces launched an attack near let me see, near, no, that's wrong, that's actually the wrong information. There is fighting reported in the direction of Novodanilivka with the support. So units of the armed forces of Ukraine carry out offensive operations from Novodanilivka. And yeah, so that is the information. I think the northern one, I think I read it wrong. Oh, sorry, it's correct, because this is the problem with the writing. So the Russians reported they destroyed an ammunition depot near Novodanilivka. Then they put at the same area the Russian forces repel an enemy attack in the same area. So there is a fight. There was fighting reported over in the Novodanilivka area. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I kind of like forgot about how they phrase it, which was pretty confusing. So there was a fighting over at Velyka also on the 20th of June. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So this is actually a Russian offensive. Actually, the Russians also, what happened is that the Russians were attacking Ukrainian columns that was moving, and then they attacked it. So yeah, and then there is fighting reported at Charivny on the 22nd, as well as Myrny on the 20th. So there was probing at Myrny, and this was 20th, and then there's nothing on the 21st. And then on Raiba reported that there is more probing at Charivny region on the Russian positions over here. So this is not attacks, no offensive just yet. Over at the Hulyaipole sector, we have shelling reported at Yablukove. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. And over at the Hulyaipole sector, the Ukrainian forces launched some probing attacks over at Rishitelivske. This direction. This is a very interesting town, because I never really reported about this town before. This is really the first time that I really heard of it in terms of the SITREP. And there was also attack reported at Novopil, or Mafopil, sorry, at Mafopil. This is reported by the Raiba as well as Remelin 21, and they were detected and then got shelled by the Russian forces. So these are the two locations. And there was also shelling reported at Dorozyanka, according to the Vostok Group of Forces, and at Reshitelivske, also by the Vostok Group of Forces. Just about shelling reports, from the 22nd report onwards, I will not be reporting on the shelling reports from the Russian Defense Ministry, because I don't think it adds too much into the reports, but it does add a lot of time into the mapping. So similar to previous attempts at reporting all the shelling reports, I'm going to not stop reporting the shelling because I want to cut short the time in terms of the mapping. And so far from the reporting so far, I think it doesn't really add a lot. So, but if there is significant ones which I think that is interesting, I will report on them, because sometimes the reporting from the Russian side is a bit frivolous. Some of the shelling is really like, it's not really important. So yeah, so we will just focus on the offensive actions and offensive operations, ground assaults. And moving into the Velyka Novosilka sector, we have fighting reported at Levadne. So on the 20th, there was fighting reported east of Levadne, and similarly also at Levadne itself. So the Ukrainians were attacking in the large sector. The aim is still Pradyune. On the 22nd, the fighting continues to be reported in this area here. Similarly, the Russian pro-Russian source Ryba reported that the Ukrainians are trying to break through to Pradyune, which is here. So the fighting continues so far, but the fighting seems to be really small. Only 5 soldiers were killed on the Ukrainian side, and then they were redrawn. So the offensive actions, the number of forces that is involved is getting smaller and smaller, it seems. And similarly, there is fighting reported at Novosilka on the 20th and on the 22nd. And then over at Rivnopil itself, there is fighting reported here on the 20th. So we have continuous fighting actions in this area here. As you can see, this is actually very similar. I think you probably can already recognize this. That's pretty common. The Russian lines hold. So this must be very irritating for the Ukrainians, because that is a lot of attacks and a lot of forces have been committed over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they don't really have a lot to show for it. So far, we only have the Ukrainian capture of Novopil, which is somewhat of a gray zone. Novosilka is a semi-gray zone, but it was a capture because it was Russian control, and Levadne. Otherwise, yeah, they pretty much stuck there. Over at the Velyka, south of Velyka Novosilka, we have shelling reported at Starozeve, which is an airstrike, and as well as Makarivka. So as you can see, the kind of report, they destroyed armored vehicles, and some killed some soldiers. So it's very it's too granular. It doesn't really add much. It's just a lot of noise, which is why I want to remove it. I want to stop so that I can spend more time reporting on other more important matters. So if not the mapping, all this shelling, there's a lot of them, and it takes a lot of time to map them. And on the 22nd, there was mixed reports. So there is at Makarivka, there was reports that the Ukrainian forces attacked near Makarivka, and allegedly from Ryba, they say that it's actually attacking south of the village, and the attack is stopped by Russian helicopters. And however, the Vostok group of forces also reported that they were attacking. They say that the Vostok group of forces launched an attack on enemy equipment and manpower cluster, preparing for offensive in the direction of Makarivka. So, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also reported that the Russians are trying to restore lost position in the area of Makarivka. So I got a feeling that this is actually an attack at Makarivka from the flanks rather than from Staromayoske, and they try to take out Ukrainian forces that was trying to prepare for an offensive. So this entire thing again it's just a kill zone for the Ukrainians at Makarivka, and I feel that they need to do something different rather than try to storm through along the river. I think that's a really bad idea. And moving into the Donetsk Front, still within the Velyka Novosilka sector of the battleground, of the theater of war, there is shelling reported rather than airstrike near Novodonetsk. The Ukrainian forces were attacking Novodonetsk on the 20th all the way to the 22nd. The report was from the Vostok group of forces, and And then on the 22nd, the 37th Marine Brigade was repelled as well. So they were scattered by artillery and airstrikes. So the Ukrainians will continue to try to attack and recapture this town that they actually managed to capture in the first few days of the offensive. Since then, the Russians have already secured this town after they realized the strategic importance of keeping it. So that's all from the Velyka Novosilka sector. Moving on, continuing in the Donetsk Front, we are now in the Marinka sector. The Russian forces continue their attack. Their fighting within Marinka on the 20th to 22nd. The Russian forces continue their attack. There was reported attack at Bojeda, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and fighting is reported south of Marinka. So after the Russian forces captured the Menageri fortified positions, the Russian forces continue to expand their control over the south of Marinka, and this is reported by Ryba, Surya Maps, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Ukrainian Defense Ministry simply say that there was a fighting reported towards the direction of Novosilka. So far, the fighting continues, with the Russians continue their offensive south of Marinka. I'm not sure how far they want to go this time around, because the Russians do give up very quickly sometimes. And interestingly, in the north of Marinka, the Ukrainians actually have some breakthrough. In the southeastern part of Krasnohorivka, the Ukrainian forces managed to capture ground over in this very fortified region, and the Russian forces push back. Mainly, the captured ground is actually along this forest line, which is, I think this is a railroad. So the Ukrainian forces managed to capture this forest line area as they push towards Donetsk city. And yeah, that's actually pretty interesting if you ask me. And then there is Russian Ka-52 shot down over the Donetsk region on the 22nd of June. Did I miss something? No, I didn't miss anything. So okay, and now we are into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, the Ukrainians continue their attack over at the Avdiivka Front. Their offensive continues with the attack over at Novosilka, Krasnohorivka, towards Vasily, towards Vodian, fighting near Zhevene and Povomaysky. At Povomaysky, there is 4 attacks. No, there's just 1 attack of Povomaysky reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 22nd of June. And there's also on the 22nd of June fighting reported towards Vodian, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Zhevene is a bit interesting. Russian Defense Ministry said that they repelled attack near to Zhevene, but the Ukrainians say that the Russians are the one attacking. So we're not too sure about what is happening over here. Then of course, as usual, the Russian Defense Ministry say that the Ukrainians are attacking in the Avdiivka region. Ukrainians say the Russians are attacking. However, we have information that according to Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source saying that there is fighting between Kamyanske and Krotobalka, with the Russians actually attacking in this area here east of Avdiivka. On the 22nd, the fighting continues. As the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported, the Russians are attacking in the Avdiivka region, which I believe is talking about the eastern side now, because the Russian push from the Kamyanske and the Krotobalka region line seems to be a sustained offensive. So I believe when the Ukrainians say that the Russians are attacking Avdiivka, I believe this is a sector that they are referring to. The Ukrainians, however, are making their own offensive. They are fighting towards Vasily, this small little village over here, reported by the Russian Defense Ministry on the 22nd of June. There's fighting reported at Krasnohorivka as well, just north of it on the 20th. This is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. Fighting is also reported at Novosilka, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on the 22nd of June. So the situation over at Avdiivka continues to be pretty complex, and yet there's not a lot of the OSIN reporting much about Avdiivka. So let's see, what's happening, and see if we have any more new information. As the Zaporizhzhia is still pretty much the candy in the eye, or yeah, something like that. That's some poor idiom. New York Front, we have nothing to report on the New York Front except that there was fighting reported at Mayos, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, on the 22nd of June. Most likely is from the Pinishny region towards Mayos. Moving into the Bakhmut Front. At the Bakhmut Front, we have fighting reported near Ozeryanivka. This is actually a capture from the Ukrainians. They managed to push all the way to the canal region, just northwest of Ozeryanivka, which is controlled by the Russian forces. So the Russian forces actually got pushed out at this sector. They still continue to hold ground on the western part of the canal near Kudyomivka, but this is another success from the Ukrainian offensive that is currently ongoing within the Bakhmut Front. And further up north, there is fighting reported along the canal, according to Deep State UA. And around Klishchiivka, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack from the west and northwest towards Klishchiivka. It's reported on the 20th and 22nd by Deep State UA. Similar information over here. So, and in the northern flank of Bakhmut, we have shelling reported at Berkivka region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The usage of flamethrowers on the Ukrainian position. And the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 20th say that the Russians attacked Orikhiv Vasilivka. This is a continuation of the Ukrainians always saying that the Russians are attacking Orikhiv Vasilivka, but it was not reported by anyone else. There is a concentration of Ukrainian forces reported on the 20th of June by pro-Russian sources, saying that the 22nd, 42nd, 115th Mechanized Brigade as well as 21st Mechanized Brigade are concentrating within the Bakhmut sector. So they are mentally preparing for some massive Ukrainian offensive over at this region here in the Bakhmut Front. Moving into the Siversk Front, we have Ukrainians continue their attack in south of Siversk towards Sako-Ivasety, Nikolaivka, south of Rozdolivka towards Yakovlivka, and at the Vasily sector. The main objective is Yakovlivka at this moment. So reports coming from Ryba on the 20th. These are all the same information. And at Rozdolivka is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So the pro-Russian sources saying that the Ukrainians are concentrating most of the effort on Yakovlivka, and at Vasily is also is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So this is a major, a massive Ukrainian push southward. Capturing Yakovlivka would mean cutting off the northern road, and then they can actually hit the rear, capture Volodymyrivka, go for Perovsky, cut the roads, and you can basically operationally encircle Soledar without actually fighting within Soledar itself. So, and then with the encirclement, the Russians will have to make some tough decisions. So, but of course, the Russians is not going to want to make a decision there. They're going to hold the lines where it is. So this is what the Russians is probably going to do. The Russians, however, is on the offensive in the Spurny region. So on the south of Spurny, the Russian forces managed to capture some ground south of Spurny. As you can see, the two blue borders are different. The Russian forces managed to capture some ground in the south. However, so this information is coming from Suryat maps on the 22nd of June. On the 20th of June, however, the Russian Defense Ministry said that the Ukrainians are actually attacking in the Spurny region. So further up north, we go to Bilohorivka. There is fighting reported at Bilohorivka, with the Russian Defense Ministry say the Ukrainians are attacking. However, by the 22nd, the information seems to suggest that the Russians are the one attacking now. Ryba and Deep State UA, both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian sources, saying that the Russians are attacking mainly around this area here. So far, the Ukrainian positions are still holding very well within Bilohorivka. Then we move into Kreminna Front. And the Kreminna Front are very complicated. Largely speaking, okay, so the Ukrainians, after the Russians made some offensive on the 20th, the 20th of June, 20th of June, 20th of June. So the Russian forces were attacking towards Terny, Yampolivka, and Toske, and this was happening on the 20th. However, the information then changed to the Ukrainians went into the offensive. The Russian Defense Ministry said that they defended Ukrainian recons over Yakovlivka, at Dibrova, and within the Siversk forestry. There is also, then they reported, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Ukrainians 63rd and 42nd Mechanized Brigade attempt to attack near Toske and Siversk forestry, and so the attacks expanded from just the probing within the Siversk forestry to an offensive. Then we have information of fighting at Dibrova on the 20th, and fighting reported on the 22nd at Kreminna. So, and then there was fighting reported towards the south of Crimean. So the attack basically have ramped up on the Ukrainian side. However, on the 22nd, towards the later part of the day, SITREP reported that the Russians actually made advance in the southern part of the forest. The DPA UA also said that the Russians are on the offensive, and Ryba then reported that the airborne forces, units of the airborne forces of the Russian side continue to do clearing up operations within the Siversk forestry, and the Russians are still attacking within the region. So this is very complicated, because within the myriad of Ukrainian offensive operations being reported, we have the Russians instead making progress within the Siversk forestry. So don't know what the hell is happening actually, which is kind of awkward. So anyway, that's all from the Kreminna Front, where the Russian offensive transit into a Ukrainian offensive, transit back into the Russian capture of certain grounds within Siversk forestry. The mapping suggests that the Russians captured this area here. So previous line was actually here. So the Russians actually managed to capture this area here, as well as this area here. So this is not a very big push. It's still rather big in the sense that it's around 1 kilometer deep in terms of the push within the gray zone. Whether the Russians will hold positions is another story altogether. But yeah, the offensive is still ongoing. And moving away from the Kreminna Front, there is shelling reported at Nevsky on the 20th. And moving into the Svatove Front, at the Svatove Front, we have skirmishes continuing at Novosilka on the 20th and the 22nd. There is shelling reported at Novosilka and Stemerkivka. And moving on into the Kupyansk Front, we have fighting reported at Yakhidny, probing reported by the Ukrainians, by the Russian Defense Ministry. Shelling is reported at Khyslivka by the Russian Defense Ministry. And over at the closer to Kupyansk itself is very interesting. We have Remlin 21, the pro-Russian source, reported that the Russian forces is now attacking towards Petropavlivka. So in his rough mapping, the Russian forces is actually pushing towards Petropavlivka. And according to SITREP maps and Remlin 21, the Russian forces managed to make progress south of Masyutivka, and they actually managed to have captured most of the forest right now, west of Sinkivka, and they are also attacking Sinkivka through the forest right now. However, the Russian Defense Ministry only reported the Ukrainians are conducting probing attacks in the Sinkivka region. So the situation is kind of interesting. So if these offensive actions are correct and accurate, we might see the Russians actually making a big push for the Ukrainian Kupyansk. And this would be a massive offensive action by the Russian side. So we will continue to monitor and see whether if this is the case. And there was shelling reported on the 20th by the Russian Defense Ministry on Masyutivka region, as well as at Novosilka region. So that's all from the Kupyansk Front. There is International Legion of the Ukrainian forces being reported at Kyivsharivka. This reported by the Zapad group of forces, where they reported airstrikes on the international legion near Kosharivka. And yeah, that's all from the Kupyansk front, and there's nothing at the Kharkiv front. And this is the summary for the day of 482 to 484 for the 20th to the 22nd of June. Hopefully this is not too complicated. I try to do my best. And yeah, so hopefully I will be able to report more stuff. And of course, press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.